All right. So the main topic for tonight, raise your hand if you saw or were part of Gatekeepers on Wednesday. Oh my God.
I was not there.
This guy down here is like, I didn't pay attention, teacher. And then DM Bloodworth who skipped class. All right.
Yep, I skipped class.
All right.
It was senior Jip Day.
We do
it's
have
because it was on Twitch.
Jip
That's
Day
what
here at Strixhaven.
All right. So what we talked about essentially was Bruce Lombardo came up with the idea of cosmologies in games and how to utilize that as like a starting point for adventures and so forth. One of the things that Gatekeepers is supposed to be about is it's supposed to be about helping people who may have questions or want, ideas. So we're not perfect. We don't have all the right ideas. I'm not the sole source of ideas. Baron G Rock, well, he might be, but none of us are the sole source. We all have different ideas. Well, we spewed a lot of facts out, including myself, where I compared Coriolis to Earth Dawn. Drink. Yes, there is alcohol in this today. Where I compared those two games on how similar they are in background, but how they diverge and they go in two different directions. But we didn't talk about how to incorporate that. How do we take this information where we had Heathen Dog talking about the old ones from Call of Cthulhu, where we had OGGM talking about Forgotten Realms and other D&D type stuff, where I was doing Earth Dawn, and I forget, we had another, what did Bruce talk about? What did Bruce talk about?
Character motivation.
Character motivation in that. But I was thinking about how can we incorporate what everybody was mentioning into one system. And now the six of us here, let's discuss as if we're creating a single world and discuss how we could put all that together. And here's the starting point. We can change this. This is just a starting point. This is still mud, though. It can be reshaped. I actually kind of took Heathen Dog's idea, because I really felt that and I'll explain that in a second, I really felt that it combined everything together. And that was when he mentioned the Ori from SG-1. If you guys have watched Stargate SG-1, you might know that the last two seasons, the Goa'uld were no longer the enemy. It became the Ori, and we kind of turned it into more Arthurian mythos, vice and Egyptian mythos, right? Well, what I wrote down here is why I think this would work is you could incorporate the Cthulhu Old Ones. And that whole concept of as you understand more, you become less part of the real reality and more part of we'll just say the mythos reality. You become less human, so to speak. It's like, so as clerics would level up, they'd gain power, but they'd lose their humanity, less empathy. And that's kind of what the whole insanity thing in Call of Cthulhu relates to, right?
You could do that with any user of magic, really. Sure.
Setting. But I'm talking. But this is what I'm saying, and that's like when I told OGGM. Of course, any DM can do what any DM wants to do. We get that, but let's develop that here. Let's develop something here that we all like, at least to some degree. The next step was now this would be more on what I was talking about with Coriolis and Earth Dawn, but they're not gods. They're not like avatars from Forgotten Realms that just stomp across the earth. It's more of that collective consciousness where we know they're real somehow, some way. The power exists. We see, like, did you ever see an actual Ori? Sure, you saw the flames, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, that was just special effects. Did you actually see an Ori in Stargate SG-1? No, you just saw the physical manifestation, just like the dark side of the Force. You never actually see the Force. There's no Force God, but you can see the power of the Force as it corrupts and the lightning bolts come out of the Emperor's hands, right?
Max, that's just because nobody has a microscope to look at the metachlorians.
Shut up!
Shut up!
No!
Nope.
That didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
and then lastly, this is one I thought up after the fact. And this is all hypothetical. I'm just getting the brain juices going. We might ultimately say, no, we're not doing this. But ultimately, they pass themselves off as good guys. You know, the devil comes in the form of an angel of light kind of mythology?
Well, that works. That works because in the Cthulhu mythos and many of the Cthulhu stories, they are fishermen. It's a whole a nautical thing. Someone will come to a town and we like to fish. Well, why does that person look like he has gills? Oh, that's just him. Until, everybody has it. But yeah,
Dark Phoenix says you see one aura. I don't remember that. You might be right. I just don't remember it.
I think it was in the actual movie after the fact, where they kind of wrapped up after the cancellation. They kind of wrapped it all up. Arc of Truth, I think, is what it was called.
Yeah, I saw it. I don't remember. It may be true. I just not remember. I remember them always showing the flames. There may have been an actual aura, and I just don't remember. That's possible. So I'm not gonna say it didn't happen. That's for sure. But my last little comment here is still based on that one. It's like, so they steal it or the amorphous. I mean, there could be a bunch of them, or it could just be one, or it could be like I mentioned before, the Force. It feeds on the faith, the emotion, and the giving up of free will. Like, the more free will you give up, you're basically donating. Now, how can you give up free will? That's not something tangible. It's a god. You doesn't need that kind of. Doesn't need a hamburger, okay? That it can hold on to.
Allegiance.
Right, it needs your allegiance or your belief. So
No. It takes that belief, puts on a little bit of mustard, a little bit of ketchup, between a couple pieces of bread. Oh, it's so good.
You're right. So that's the starting point. Again, if there's any part of that you're like, no, let's go a different route. That's cool, but I wanted to give us something because I didn't know how many we're going to be on. I just kind of wanted to give something for us to start with and see how we can incorporate that and show folks out there. If you're creating your own setting, of course, most of you probably already know how to do this or don't care. Like, dude, I have 7 gods in my world, 3 good, 3 bad, 1 neutral in the middle, or something like that. Fine, you do. That means you might not need this information, but for other people want to think outside the box. I don't want just a god. Yay, I'm the god, or I'm the pantheon of gods like every other D&D world. I want to take all of those things that we talked about on Wednesday and form it into something interesting.
Right. So in this cosmology, magic, or at least this particular access to supernatural, the supernatural, would be ultimately corrupting.
It could be if that's the route we still want to go with. I just put that out there because it's helped combine everything we talked about on Wednesday.
Right. So I mean, that would be an interesting reveal. Depends on at what point during a character's career. Let's say they start out, they're like, oh, this is groovy. First level, I got a couple of spells. This little
not corrupting, just more
weird.
removed.
Huh?
It could be both. Well, let's talk about that.
Corrupting.
It could.
If we're going with Heathen Dog's idea, it's as you gain. I mean, there was a short story. Was it in Dragon Magazine about 2 wizards that got in a wish battle, and the more wishes they cast, the farther they got away, from reality. So they were just tossing wish spells at each other. And so that just makes you think. The more
Well, again, I'm not taking the specifics of Heathen Dogs. I just thought that he had a good example to get this rolling. But you're right.
Tap into the Force or the magic, the further, the higher level spells, for lack of a better term, you start. The more you withdraw from the world, because the layers of the onion are peeling away, or just things like time become pointless because
Sure. So here's my question, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep facilitating this. I'm going to let you guys decide stuff, but I'm going to keep facilitating this by asking questions and so forth. So how do we do this? And again, the answer could be 1, 2, or 0 of this. How do we take what Joe said, where it becomes corrupting, and what OGGM said, where maybe it's not corrupting, or maybe it is corrupting, and it also just pulls you further away, but still have it something that the people on the world, whatever world we're creating, we'll just say it's D&D because we all have that background, right? It's a D&D world. And we move it into a direction where why would characters on this world worship this? Obviously, behind the scenes, we know. Oh, we know this is a corrupting influence. If you're a cleric, you're screwed eventually. But
well, if you're a facilitator or a priest, I guess is the better way to put it, then I would think that you would want to bring in that those people for the worship in order to help push up your power, because you want to think about it. That's your battery. You want to draw the power out of the battery. So again, the Ori. You're doing the Ori route. Essentially.
So then you have to go into a forced religion.
Well, the thing is that the commoner on the street is not going to know that this is what's happening.
Or like
religion is usually created to explain things we don't understand.
so let's take the Call of Cthulhu route, and then as an aside to that, the whole sword and sorcery Conan thing, right? So, and that is that you oftentimes in sword and sorcery and in Call of Cthulhu. Well, yeah, exactly. It is a multi-level marketing scheme. It's a pyramid scheme.
But there's one caveat to this. We know the religion is real because the powers actually are invoked.
Yeah.
Right. So, sorcerer characters in Conan are corrupted. They are not. So the characters, the actual player characters, are not trusted by anybody, but they have to keep paying to their patron in order to keep these powers, and these powers often manifest in like weird and grotesque ways.
Kind of like DCC.
You'll have a tentacle that's hidden under your cloak or some other thing like this. But in order to keep that power, you have to keep paying to your patron. Or in the other case, you're a group of heroes. You ride into town. There's this huge ziggurat, right? With the sorcerer at the top sacrificing children because, well, if not, then the god is going to destroy the town.
Okay, so how would you get people to follow a religion that's that blatantly, I don't want to say evil, but I'm going to say evil, because even the Ori, using that example, didn't come off as that. They did all their stuff behind the scene or sneakily over. They didn't even realize that they're having their souls sucked from them.
Well, the Aztecs did it.
If you don't follow the religion, your town dies.
Yeah.
There's the chosen one concept that, and it's actually in H.P. Lovecraft. So there's a story. I wish I remembered the name of it, where this scientist encounters an alien race where their brains are inside these boxes, and they have the knowledge of everything, and he wants to gain access to this knowledge, and they basically say to him, or they just convey to him in some way that the only way that can happen is that he has to voluntarily have his brain removed and put into a box, and he is no longer part of this, this earth, this consciousness, this whatever, and he chooses to do so because he knows that is going to give him access to all of the knowledge that they have. It's the chosen one kind of motivation behind it. And so, like you were saying earlier, it may not have to be tainted. It's something else other than tainted. It's just that desire to be in the know.
Okay, so for me, let's say I do that. Let's say I'm the one that does the brain box thing, using the Battle Lords reference there. How does that convince Baron G. Rock, Joe, you, OGGM, and Crafty to follow that same religion?
Because they're hoping to become the chosen one as well. It's a nihilistic cult that, eventually this is why everyone drank the Kool-Aid, right? It's
Xenu is very awesome. And if you start at the bottom level, I'm going to sell you these books. You can learn a little bit, okay, until you become knowledgeable enough that you can pay me more money to move up to level 2, so that you can pay me more money to move up to level 3. You see, so because again, Xenu doesn't want to give you all the knowledge right away, and it's my responsibility.
You couldn't handle it.
Correct. It's my responsibility to collect your money and give you the education that you need.
All of a sudden, this turned into the Freemasons. What's going on?
That's what I was thinking too.
Mr.
Hubbard was have some copyright issues with your idea, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go with this theme so far. I'm actually going to start scribbling some of this stuff down. So,
well, the other thing is So you have your in-world type of how are people going to be why will they want to follow a religion that's obviously bad? Coercion. So coercion is where we're going, right? And then the other thing is, how does it translate into the PCs as far as is there a character class that gains powers or whatever by being a member of this religion or a priest of this religion? And do you have a shelf life beyond just adventuring?
It's kind of two separate things, and you again, guys, jump in if you think I'm wrong or if you want to go in a different direction on this. So I'm looking at two parts of this. It's easy for the player character playing the character who's going to get the power to want to do that, and I absolutely understand that. But if we're going to make the determination that that this entity, these spirits, these gods, whatever they are, feed on that belief, that subservience. Fine, it's good for me, but how do we get the society to do it? Now, somebody mentioned, I think it was Joe, but somebody mentioned Aztecs earlier. Aztecs sacrificed their enemies way more than they sacrificed themselves.
Yeah, enemies but they still did.
So enemies and criminals.
So I actually
still did though.
I think I've done something similar to this in one of my games. Basically, it was a 3035, and that's what kind of made it click when the shoulders thing there is we had a Tauren who was played by the story
World of Warcraft.
It was a World of Warcraft D&D 3035. This is several years ago, and he was playing a Tauren. Well, yes, and I went and downloaded like all of the Fellows Brotherhood, all that stuff, and kind of ran them in that scenario. Well, it became a running joke that the Tauren, who was a shaman, he was hung like bull, and he wanted to know if they wanted to become followers of his new religion, the Tauren Skull. This is the same guy who played this, also played in a different game where he was a paladin, Tauren Skull, I want to say, and he played with an 8 intelligence. It was amazing. But anyway, he actually wound up doing conversions of the Fellows Brotherhood because he was hung like bull. They thought if they followed him, they would be as well endowed. And the women, of course, followed because I'm like bull. So I mean, and that's kind of the same way we're kind of looking at it. If I start following you and start doing the whole the prayers, I'm gonna do the Hulk Hogan thing here. Eat your vitamins, say your prayers.
Now he's invoking Hogan.
All that. Well, yeah, but still, it's kind of that same thing. It's the mentality. If you are, when you're indoctrinating, you fully embrace it. You have it there. This is what you're going to get out of it.
Right, because a lot of people think short term.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I do want to make one comment to this Ori thing. The Book of Origin, it did have loads of wisdom in it. Well, it was masked wisdom, but the thing is it may not have been evil, but it was definitely sucking the life and souls out of the out of the believers. So even if something's nice, I might have a cupcake, but if it's got poison inside of it, it's still not a good thing. But I do get what he's saying, and that was part of the whole thing with the ancients versus the Ori, where it's like the ancients were standoffish, so some people could see that as evil. You didn't help anybody. You could have helped. With the Ori, like, hey, we're willing to help. All you have to do is give up everything.
So I think for a religion like this to work, it's either going to have some obfuscation, and the reality behind it has to be hidden to some degree, or you're going to have some coercion and some forced, the populace, you must, or you die, or we take all your stuff.
Could you do both?
You might do, so you could still do both. You could do some coercion, and the real nastiest truths are only known by the people in the upper echelons of this, and maybe not even them. There could be some things that the power that itself hides from them. So.
Ghost of Tantalorn, the reason we're going with this is because it's already documented all over D&D. Gods that walk around the earth. We got the good gods, neutral gods, evil gods. You've got the Bible in the real world, the Torah and the Quran for a single god entity type thing. If you want it to be something a little different than what's necessarily been done. Now, are any of us truly unique in this? No, because everything's been imagined at some point or another by somebody, right?
There are no original ideas, yeah.
Right. It's like music. You might find new ways of putting it together, but all the notes have been played. But that's what we're doing. We're putting those notes together in a way that's just fun. I just wanted to take the discussion from Gatekeepers on Wednesday and move it into something where we're actually putting something tangible out. And I'm going to start writing down some of these notes here. And so yeah, we're going to go with the parasites thing because that's not something you see in a D&D game, because that would really give a player a pause. Like, wait a minute, why am I playing a cleric? What's going to happen to me by the time I get to level 20? Well, it's like playing a juicer in Rifts. That just popped in my head. It's just like playing a juicer in Rifts. If anybody's played a juicer in Rifts, you have a life expectancy. You might have the best attributes and the best skills and the fastest, bestest thing in the game, but that's going to end. The drugs are going to kill you. So
on that parasite thing, following down that line of that parasite thing, the being or the entity can present itself as this angelic figure, this immensely beautiful woman or angel or god or whatever, and it seems like it's completely benevolent.
Yes.
But in reality, what it wants is it feeds off of the souls of each one of its followers, just little bits here and there, not enough for people to notice. But in order for that parasite to grow and to continue to feed, it requires clerics and priests to go out into the world and spread its message through quote unquote good deeds. And once those people see the player characters, the clerics and the player character party doing these good deeds, oh man, I really want to follow that god. And then that god just takes a little bit of that person's soul and a little bit more. Now, they're not necessarily doing that to the cleric themselves, because taking the soul of the cleric means that they can't fight as hard for them as they would everybody else. But everybody else slowly becomes mindless zombies to this parasitic god.
And we'll get more into that a little bit later. But I do want to look at get a couple of posts here, and then I do have a question for you guys. One that we have to answer definitively before we move on. So, could you have a society that's truly atheist? Yeah, I mean, I think you can. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you consider worship. This is when you get really philosophical, and I don't want to do that here. We're like, well, if you live your life around football, that means you worship football. No, it doesn't. Well, again, to me, it doesn't. But when I went to Lutheran school, that's what they used to, preach into us. So, there are people who believe that something you focus on could become a religion. I think you could have a society like that, but it'd be less fun in a D&D realm, because where do you get the spells from then?
If we're talking about a society in D&D, sure, you can imagine anything.
Yeah.
If we're talking about real, I don't know, because it's ask any any evolutionary biologist, and they'll tell you that religion is genetic.
We actually have one. Well, Heathen Dog spends way more time with him than I do, but I think that's what Duncan Idaho does. He's been on Legion Myth, not Weekly Livestream. Well, he's on that too.
Well, they believe that it's religious. I mean, it's genetic because it exists in almost all cultures and almost all times and almost in all geographical locations. It's so pervasive that you can't get away from it being part of what is human.
Yeah.
All right. But in a D&D context.
In D&D context, sure. You can have elves. They can be atheists.
Sure.
They're a waste of skin anyway.
There's a question, though, that I want to get answered before we move. I agree. Before we move on, which is, so are we going to treat this entity, this god, these gods, these spirits, whatever, the parasite, we'll call it the parasite for now. Are we going to treat it as one entity? Are we going to treat it as multiple entities, like a pantheon, or are we going to treat it as a consciousness, or are we just going to treat it as a force? Well, for a religion, you're technically right, but for a religion, as we're defining this world, because we're trying to define a setting here, so to speak. What would the simple answer be? Or is it going to be like Earth Dawn and Coriolis, where it could be this, it could be that, we don't really know. Coriolis cares and wants to find out. Earth Dawn doesn't care, and they're just like, look, man, the shit's real because it happens. I don't care why.
Yeah.
You can make it complex and
the
say,
power turns on when I click the switch. I don't want to know how it works.
You could
Well,
say,
the thing is too is you could also do it as like if it's a parasite, a hive mind.
Yeah,
Each cleric has a we're doing the whole SG1 type thing, like a little Gaul stuck in the belly.
Or let's go.
Whatever.
Let's go deep D&D, and let's say an Alhoon decides that it wants to create its own hive mind away from the Mind Flayer's hive mind, and therefore it creates this entire pantheon around itself as a way to get brains.
right. So as far as humanity is concerned, it's a pantheon, but behind a couple of layers, maybe it's only one creature, and maybe there's something even one more layer deep, where it's maybe is a collective consciousness or a gooey.
But then who created where'd the Alhoon come from? I mean,
right? So who made who?
Well,
so
is it Unity from Rick and Morty?
Yeah, something like that. It could be a car battery, and inside the car battery is a whole society of people that keeps that car battery charged. But when the battery stops working, you have to go inside the car battery and see what the heck's going on.
Okay, so that I don't have to write a paragraph on here what this is, how do we want to simplify that to like one sentence or one phrase?
What was the question again?
Worship the car battery.
I thought the question was how does religion start, and how do you start a religion in the game?
No. This specific question is it one entity, multiple entities, a consciousness, or a force? And are we going to call it
Pantheon as far as humans?
If it's just an alien parasite that's feeding off this planet, then it's just probably one entity, or it might be a group of entities. If we're cribbing off a Stargate, it's a group of entities that need energy from living beings, but they know. So
here's why it matters, though, because as a pantheon, you can have god wars. Like my god's better than your god.
I was
right?
just going to say it, yeah.
But there was,
and even the gods could war with each other as well.
Yeah, that happened in
and Record of
Cosmology, that happened.
Holy Wars.
That happened in Stargate.
That never happened.
But if it's just one entity, you're really not going to have a god war unless there are schisms within it. Like, you can look at the whole Abrahamic religions in the real world. But, again, if you have too much reality in there, then people get bored by it. And then part of this is to do something a little bit more interesting.
Okay, well, if it's one entity, the only reason why there be a god war is because the entity wants there to be a god war to convince the humans or whoever that something's happened.
So somebody mentioned a moment ago
to move its motivation along
about the Gua'uld. Well, the Gua'uld were almost the exact opposite of the Ori. The Ori were like single focused. The Gua'uld were against each other. They each one thought that he or she was better than the other one.
I was saying like a hive mind where they were all working together.
Well, what if it's a hive mind that's schizophrenic and they don't like each other?
Well, again, that would be the Gua'uld, right? It theoretically, in a very simplistic way. If that's the way we want to go with this, we could. But then the next question is, how do we get the Gua'uld inside of the cleric? Is that just an initiation rite? Like the Egyptians had weird initiation rites. Are you guys okay with that route?
What was it in Stargate, the Trill or whatever it was?
Well, it was.
That was Star Trek, the Trill.
Yeah.
Star Trek, the Trill. That is a lot different.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. So, speaking of Star Trek with the Borg,
I'm the one.
So there you have with the Borg you have the hive mind, but they did have divisions amongst the Borg
later on,
where some started to break that free will or whatever.
From someone like Lucas or whatever the hell his name was.
Well, they got separated. and then developed in their own direction.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Hugh.
Hugh.
You know, so even if you do have a one entity hive mind, that doesn't mean that within that there might not be, at least at some point, a fracture within that one entity, and you have a new subdivision that will
And
then
that
generate.
is the danger of a hive mind versus it just being a single entity. So is that the way we want to go? Again, I'm just writing down notes so that when we're done with this discussion, we'll just have this world, the cosmology of this world is. Okay.
Hive minding
It's
is
the
great.
central focus, and
Yeah.
you go off
Hive minded conflict. Yeah.
Is great, and then you have little pouch buddies for all the clerics.
So there's. I'm gonna spin a little caveat on the hive mind. So, in the manga and then also the anime in Berserk, you have the God Hand, and the God Hand is looking for the next member of the God Hand, and so the main character follows his friend. And his friend gets this huge army together over the course of the beginning of the manga and the beginning of the anime called the Golden Arc, where Griffith, who is this commander of this great army, right, and builds up and up and up and up and up, so that when Griffith eventually falls, his fall is so spectacular and so. And I mean, he hits rock bottom so hard that he literally asks the gods, "I will do anything to get out of this hole." And that's when the God Hand wakes up and says, "Come, now join me." And the world is just descended into chaos, and then the rest of Berserk is about fighting against the God Hand, and specifically Griffith, who is now known as Femto. So I think that would be a fantastic campaign arc where you follow this guy who is following whatever god that he is following, only to fall so spectacular, and then you say, well, just pray to your god and your god will save you. But that god now takes all of that despair, all of that hatred that you now have because you've fallen so spectacularly, and rebirths you into this creature of chaos, or rebirths a PC into a creature of chaos. That PC then becomes an NPC which the party now must fight.
For a campaign arc, I like that. For a cosmology of an entire world, religion's over.
No, it's not over. That's the thing. Is now the God Hand first starts off as benevolent, and then halfway through becomes, nope, we're not benevolent. And
you paused again, or muted. Yep, there you go. Nope, you're still muted.
Nope, muted.
Still muted. Nope, muted. Whatever you bumped it right, because you still can't talk.
I did.
There we go. There you go.
I did. Oh, so whatever. Again, it starts off benevolent, then goes through this transformation of, you will worship us so that we will give you these gifts. Now you will worship us or you will die.
Okay, so that would be like a cleric going through the levels.
The Holy Roman Empire.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, the Roman Empire is pretty open about religion. They didn't care who you worship. They just kind of figured you needed to worship something. I mean, unless you're a Christian, but that was a whole different deal.
Then you had to worship lions.
Yeah, I don't know how to write to put this down, and I just want a quick blurb for it. I don't want all
my
that.
best friend was named Biggus Geekus.
Fractured hive mind.
Yeah, well, I've got that part written down, but I'm talking. I don't know how to write down what Krafty had because that's pretty specific, and I don't want to write all that.
Just write Berserk plot line.
Yeah.
Berserk plot.
I'm not.
And then watch Berserk.
It's a benevolent god that is waiting for your fall. They want you to fail, so that they can feed off of your failure.
Well, that's not benevolent.
Yeah, that's seemingly benevolent.
There you go.
All right.
There you go. Seemingly benevolent.
Yeah. Here. Here's
Are
a drug.
you guys
That drug
good with
makes you
that, or
feel
do we
good.
want?
You want some more of the drug? That drug makes you feel good. Want some more of the drug? Look how good you feel.
Oh, I'm not reading.
No, I'm gonna take the drug away.
Oh, we're Jimadar now.
Unless you start paying me for the drug.
Jemadar, oh my God. I'm not reading Berserk to figure this out. We're going to write it simply. This is just a fun exercise. It's like, can you see them? No, you can't see them. They're not on camera. I have the first two. You can almost see them. They're right next to those white books right at the end of the screen. I have the two big, thick Berserk books, but I know they're like.
Write down watch Berserk.
No.
Yeah.
It's not as interesting to me as it is to other people. I get why people like it, but Berserk to me was kind of
People usually like it because of the big sword, and then they watch and they go, "Oh wow!"
I didn't like it because I had like 7 pages with literally no text on it. Like, okay, it's a cartoon. Oh, now you're saying something. Oh, mad. Oh, okay. like that's boring.
Yeah, well, I mean, so it starts.
It had decent demons in it. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, the golden arc is honestly, I think, the best part of Berserk.
Okay, so we're not creating a full religion here. We're writing down ideas. But when I'm done with this, I figure I'll have like 10 phrases, 10 sentences that say this should spark somebody. If we were to cut it down, find a way to clip it down into its little elements to say, all right, here we go. We have now looked at religions in other games, utilizing what we talked about on Wednesday, which was Call of Cthulhu, Coriolis, Earth Dawn, and Forgotten Realms. Was there any others in there?
No, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, you kind of combining the factors of all of them into one snowball and say, this is what we came up with, and now we can put this in a D&D world.
I'm a new DM. I'm building my world. These are my questions, and we're trying to help you answer them. Question number 1: do you even want a religion? How important is it?
Right. What I don't want to get into is a huge philosophical debate about what religion means, or try to make it so convoluted I have to write 7 pages just to understand what's going on here. I could do that later. I just don't want to do that now.
You shouldn't.
What you guys don't realize, this is actually for his book. This is where he's stuck.
Oh God, no.
You should include Crom in any pantheon. Crom.
Yes,
You need
I
one
agree.
god that is an uncaring god that doesn't give a shit about anything, and is just there to keep the people anchored to reality.
But if we're going with a
elephant.
hive, but if we're going to a hive mind, that kind of defeats that purpose. Unless now we're going to add in other gods.
No,
Well,
Crom
see, that's
Crom
what-
would laugh at your hive mind.
Right, and the hive. So why would the hive mind just be the only religion in the world? If we're going back to the whole Borg thing and the separation of the Borg, you would have to have a much bigger hive mind that thinks one way, and you have another hive mind that is trying to pull people away from the larger hive mind. There needs to be
If you want that.
Well,
It doesn't
there-
actually have the conflict like with the Ori wasn't like that.
Yeah, there would have to be some catalyst to create that, and that could be either a human catalyst that creates that fracture, or it could be it could be some other kind of an outside thing that creates that same thing. There was another sci-fi where I forget again who it was, where there was a god that was like coming to devour planets, right? And
It was called the Transformer movie.
Yes,
His
Or
name is
Galactus.
Galactus.
it's Unicron.
no, it wasn't Transformers, but probably very similar thing, and that's what it was. It was like a growing chaos that they had to stop. It could have been the Fifth Element too, which has that
The moon.
thing in there. Yeah, but that's another. That's where you take the hive mind and you create something that is greater than the hive mind.
Well,
That
I mean,
will-
if it's
So
alien
now
hive
we're
mind,
talking.
It had to come from somewhere.
Well, yeah, but it's like a cosmic presence that is not part of that world, and that's the catalyst for creating division within your primary hive mind kind
Yes,
of.
exactly.
So now we're adding layers onto this thing, and we're growing. Nothing necessarily wrong with that. I'm confirming, I guess, what I'm saying. So instead of just having the parasitic element, now we're gonna have the parasitic element and those who.
Well, something has to conflict. You have to have some kind of
there has to
conflict.
be. There has to be.
Yeah.
The divine being is an alien parasite, then it had to have come from somewhere, which means there's something else.
Well, the conflict could also be, hey, I think that's a parasite. I don't want to worship that. I mean, it could be that simple. I'm not saying that's the right answer, but it could be that simple. Because who do the Ori fight? And I go back to the Ori example only because that's what Heathen Dog was mentioning, and I think is a good base point for us. Doesn't mean we have to follow that.
I don't want to be a battery in your machine.
You're right. It's like
I don't want to be a soul in your engine.
Yeah, I didn't like that when you took my wife for a week, she came back and now she's a robot. What the hell? Or an automaton, a golem. Well, whatever term you want to use for the.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that might be a little further, but she's not the same. She's changed. What happened? She's almost lifeless. It could be something like that as well. Again, I'm not saying that any of the other ideas that Krafty and DM Bloodworth are wrong. I'm just throwing that out there. We don't necessarily have to have that, but conflict can come in different forms. Now, having that conflict, we've already changed them from the Ori to more Goa'uldish. So now you have the Goa'uld, you have the factions there. So are we talking like another higher faction? Another higher faction?
What about if it was something that was there before the parasites?
Yeah. And so the parasites took over, kind of kicked them to the curb?
No, where'd the parasites come from?
Where did the parasite come from?
Yeah.
No one knows.
Aberration.
I mean,
but do we want to answer that question? Some do, some don't.
Bruce brought it. Who knows?
Bruce Lombardo of Dick's Division, brother. No, we don't. Like you said with Coriolis and Earth Dawn, we don't have to answer it ever.
Yeah.
We just drop the hint. If these are all campaign hooks.
So somebody asked the right question earlier, OGGM, and I think you're hitting on this. Not necessarily, what's the conviction, or how much certainty is there in the religion? Well, using Coriolis and Earth Dawn as the original construct, they all know it's real. The icons, if that's what they are, who cares? That's what we call them. The icons are real. The passions are real. How do I know that? Because when I go oogada boogada, things happen, and it's based on those passions. I'm way oversimplifying, but you get the idea. Since we're doing a D&D realm, when I go, oh God, help me,
to believe in faith of something that's real, whether
Now, we also talked about how on Corinne, wizards are actually, Dragonlance, wizards are actually clerics. They don't realize it, but they're actually clerics. They're getting the power from the gods. All the wizards realize that they're getting the powers from the gods. You can see New Atari if you're a Black Robe wizard. So they're still clerics because some people go, well, why can't they just cast spells like magic users? Well, we could also go the other route. Now, what I want to be careful of here is now that we have 7 people in here, especially, is I don't want to go down too many rabbit holes of 7 different pieces of imagination that go in different directions because
holy number.
Yeah, we'll never finish this. And based on based on one other comment, simplicity will make the religion easier in your game. If we give you these 10 things or 8 things or 15 things, whatever happens to be, for the construct of the religion, if you were to use it in your game, Bruce could do it differently than DM Bloodworth could do it differently than OGGM, et cetera, but it has the same construct. And that simplicity is going to actually make it easier so you don't have to read a book to figure out how a cleric casts a spell. But I think that DM Bloodworth he's hitting on something where it's like, okay, where'd they come from? OGGM has got a good counter. Does it really matter? So let's go into that for the next step. How do we want that? Because we've already talked about the conflict. How do we want that conflict to be? Do we want it to be within? Do we want it to be the within, like the Goa'uld, where it's like each one's against each other? So my Goa'uld's better than your Goa'uld, or my God's better than your God. Do we want it to be like the Ori, where people are like, you're parasites, and I don't want you sucking my soul out? Versus the people like, no, your soul being sucked makes us all better. Or do we want it like DM Bloodworth said, well, hold on. The Ori came here, or the parasites came here, and now the people where they came from are like, oh, wait, we found you. And now there's some other conflict. Oh, wow, they're gods.
Why do we need the conflict?
Well, you always need conflict.
Yeah.
Conflict is what tells it.
Well, but we need a conflict amongst the gods. You know.
Well,
Maybe not amongst the gods, but maybe amongst the people as.
Oh, yeah, there will definitely be conflicts amongst the people, even if it's the exact
to interpret
same person.
what. So the hive mind's out there. We'll go back to the hive mind idea. The hive mind's out there. The hive mind wants to get, basically wants to get souls, life force to suck on, and so. But you have various religions that they conflict on how to worship said hive mind.
Yep.
So one thinks that, I need to prick my finger and I need to drop blood around my doorstep before I go to bed. Another one says, no, that's completely stupid. You don't need to do that.
You need to slice the head of a chicken and do its blood. And put it doorstep.
But if it's a
hot goes, no, you need to slice the blood of another human and put it over your door. We all know it's blood because that's what the original words was. Just you heard it wrong, Matt. You heard it wrong.
But if it's a hive mind, would they really be that much at odds with each other?
No, I get that, but
like Heathen Doug said, the hive mind doesn't care. It's still getting its energy. It doesn't care how you perceive.
So you're saying that it's not the hive mind in conflict.
How the chicken perceives you.
I believe that when I pour this beer, this beer, and I bless it, this beer becomes the galactic goo of my God.
No, but you heard it wrong. It's not that you pour the beer; it's that you pour blood in the beer, and that becomes the galactic goo of your God. And then Joe's going to say,
OGGM, I'm asking you this question.
My enemies.
So what you're saying, OGGM, is the conflict isn't between the gods or the parasites or whatever. The conflict is between the interpretation. So when you say that it's got to be blood, and Krafty says
backs me up.
Sure. No, I'm with that, but I'm clarifying. So the hive mind isn't fractional.
It's a single hive mind.
Got it.
I'm actually bouncing off of OG. I agree with him that if you're going to have a single hive mind, then you need to have
alien. It doesn't really care.
Gotta run, everyone. Have a good night.
All right, Jim, have a great night.
My nose is that I did something, and when I did this, people started noticing me, and I could feed off of this. So I'm going to keep doing this because I know that they're going to give me the energy I need. But I don't care how I get the energy. You don't care what the chicken thinks about you when you're eating that delicious barbecue chicken. It's your food.
Nom, nom, nom.
Okay, so then
the hive mind is alien. It doesn't perceive things the way you or I would perceive them.
And we're going to definitely get into that in a little bit.
Something happened. And then Joe saw this. And Joe went to take what he saw out of his village to Baron G-Rock's village. And told Baron G-Rock, it's post office. And then Joe left. Well, what Baron G-Rock heard, Baron Ewok heard, he then takes over to Bruce's village. But now it's another layer away from what Joe said. So
now it's just a sticky village.
Bruce just hears something different.
Now we're playing telephone.
Bruce goes to my village, and Baron goes to Krafty's village, and Joe goes to Matt's village. This is literally how religion spread.
Sure.
But we all hear something slightly different. So if it goes back to the blood on the door,
but
I'm the hive mind. I feed off the blood. I do not.
But
care
OG, I don't like the fact that your religion does it this way, and I believe that that the way that you worship this elder brain or this collective is wrong. Yes. And I'm going to tell the people, and then I'm going to go to the church of your religion, and I'm going to nail a piece of paper to the door that says, this is how it should be done.
Exactly. And then a war breaks out.
Exactly. Well, I'll even change that up just a touch. How dare you call it a hive mind when we know that it is the, I don't want to say Trinity, it is the pentinity. What's five? There are obviously five of them because we are in the shape of five. It is the pentagram. That is the source of everything. We know that there are five of them. How dare you say it a hive mind like it's just one thing?
And then you're going to have some people that believe that because it's a hive mind, in reality, that whole collective makes up only one entity instead of a hive mind of entities.
That's only one vote.
Yeah.
You can have that as well.
Yeah, the hive mind's still getting fed. It doesn't care.
Right. No, and we all get that. I think that we're having some fun here. We're moving into a nice direction. So I have hive mind parasites perceived as a pantheon. Doesn't mean it has to be, but it's perceived as a pantheon. What I have a question mark next to right now, because we keep talking about it, but we haven't solidified it, is are we actually going to have some sort of, dare I say, soul-sucking or a creature in pouch? I prefer the soul-sucking side of it because I think it's easier for a D&D type game. But, or something like a corruption, we'll call it. Are we going to have some sort of corruption that as you go up in the levels, you have to read more from Krafty's book, and he doles it out to you. Oh, you're here for the second lesson. Well, come on in. And all of a sudden, your skin's a little paler, your eyes are a little dimmer, your fingernails are a little yellower.
You start drawing circles. And
that's the Red Wizards of Fae.
These three people got the third three people.
Yay, Red Wizards of Fae.
Well, truthfully, once you get to a certain point, that's when they put the worm in you.
Right.
So are we still going to go with the worm route?
Eventually.
Okay, what's a good level for that? Using D&D terms, 1 to 20. What's a good?
Actually, 15.
Wow, that high. Okay, you say 15. You said mid-level, Joe?
I said name level.
What's name level? 9?
9 to 11 depends. Yeah.
We're going by D&D. Once you start getting access to those high
I think 9 is a good, because it's kind of a rough point that they like to do in D&D where things really change for you. I think 9 is good. We got 15. What do the rest of you guys say?
Name level is good. The only thing that I ask is that once that worm is put in you, or whatever is put in you, does that mean that your character immediately becomes an NPC, or
no? I would never do that.
Or do you carry that worm around for a little while as it corrupts you further and further?
Yes. You might not even know the worm's there.
Oh no! It could be factional. That could be part of the factionalism. Some people are like, bless the worm. Thank you, great worm. I now have part of God in me. And other people are like, you're a freak. And they don't tell you. But they don't tell you.
Some people require that you just take a little bit of the top of the worm off.
Oh.
And that's how you...
Maybe you make little earmuffs for your worm. Name him Irving or something.
We might be going a little too deep on this one, but
maybe put a turtleneck on him so he stays warm.
So when you get name level, when you remove it, when you get name level and you get your worm, you get some sort of new name or a suffix.
The Egyptians
or
were big in that. Renaming yourself.
Bob.
Reborn renaming,
Jim Bob Ra.
Jim Bob. Yeah.
Ra.
Just praise to him, Jim Bob.
Okay, so I have a couple of caveats to this, and this is because this is a Dungeons and Dragons game and not a Stargate universe, right? Number one is we can't have the character taken over by the worm like it is done in as the Goa'uld. Otherwise, the player isn't going to want to play the character anymore.
Can you have circumstances where it could temporarily?
Well, what about in the case of a mind flare? I mean, that's the whole premise now behind Baldur's Gate 3 is that the entire party is a party of infected players, at least as far as I've seen. So
sure, but it's one of those things that even in old D&D we didn't want to be beholden to the GM says I have to do this now every single day because the stupid worm. I could possibly see certain times when maybe it would take over, but I wouldn't want to take that away from the player. I'd want to make sure that the player knew how to act with the worm in it. So maybe the worm could punish the character when it does something wrong. Like, oh, you're taking 1d6 points of electrical shock damage because the worm... it's almost like having an ego sword. Yeah, that's the way I would look at it, like having an ego sword.
The source of your power wants you to do something specific. You're not doing it. Here's a point of damage.
And when you die, it literally bursts out of your body and attacks the whatever killed you, taking it over.
That's a great point. No, I like that. I like that because if the players haven't figured out that the hive mind is parasites yet, when they get these worms or whatever, if that worm attacks the rest of the players, that could change the entire dynamic of the campaign or whatever world, that people figure out that, oh man, this thing really is not good.
I don't know what this means, but I've heard it before, so I'm guessing this is a 5e term?
It is a 5e term, yes.
Okay.
I'm reminded of Babylon 5. Toward the end of it, one of the characters in it had a being attached to him. And,
Lando.
Huh?
Lando had a shadow parasite attached to him.
Yeah, shadow
Oh,
parasite.
yeah.
Nobody could see it, but him. I think he could see it, maybe. But
that's why he was always drinking.
Yeah, he was under its influence. But the way to get some freedom would be to get drunk. So maybe there could be some aspect of that, though that would mean that it's in control most of the time, which we don't want.
Right. We want the player to still be in control.
But if they get drunk,
then the worm takes over.
Then the worm could take over because you drink, you black out.
Don't do drugs, kids.
Then what you have to do is you have to go find the Scout's Brew table from Traveler, and it's all kinds of fun. You wake up and figure out what happened.
You can even go the werewolf that one time.
The reverse,
yeah.
That explains the religious ceremonies where everybody gets together and inhales the gas and starts dancing to celebrate the god. That's the moments where you're letting the worm take over. The religious epiphany.
I hate that bitch.
There's a game that used to be on iOS. I don't know if it's still out there called Plague Inc.
Just standing outside your door, looking at it like
Hold on.
with sad face on.
Oh, no puppy sad face.
So, one of the variants of Plague Inc. is the worm, where you control the worm and its DNA development. And some countries will fall very easily to it, and they start having holiday celebrations where they all will grab people in their city and country that don't have the worm yet, and they indoctrinate them, and they become very, very amicable to the worm, and they love the worm. And when you go to your DNA page, you can see the worm as it's taking over the entire human brain. It's just a wonderful development through like 45 minutes. But I recommend, if you guys don't have Plague Inc. on your phone, if you need a dopamine project, that is a good game to play. And the worm is great.
Look how nicely this is packed. It hasn't ashed. It hasn't ashed off yet. That's amazing.
That is very good.
I want to backtrack. Go on.
Oh, so going on what Bruce says and maybe elevating that is, and kind of going that whole Beck-me route is once you start getting closer and closer to level 20, and it makes sense in D&D because as you gain levels, you essentially become a god. Is that as you get to level 20, eventually you become part of said hive mind. You literally become.
How do you do that and still ensure that the player understands that you're in control of the character, but you also just can't change the religion because you're part of the hive mind?
Well, that's why
most players will
happens.
Just see the power that they get and go, okay.
Yeah, but that's why that happens at like level 20 or beyond level 20, when the campaign when everything is wrapping up to the end. Then the party becomes part of the hive mind, and then you just start a new campaign in the world.
Yeah. Affected by whatever the previous characters did.
Yeah. Or you depose.
And if somebody starts a religion based.
Oh, that would be awesome. What Joe just said would be awesome.
What did he say?
So Joe said that you go depose the hive mind because you play in this. You play in that first campaign where you become this hive mind god. But then when you start another campaign in the same world, the players are going to have the meta knowledge that this religion sucks ass.
The only thing
Literally.
I don't like the deposing thing is that would defeat the purpose of the hive mind. The hive mind wants to grow, so I would think it would just become part of that collective.
They go to depose the people before them, and then they take their spot.
Right. What I'm saying, what Crafty and I are saying is, first campaign, maybe second, maybe third, who knows? At some point, maybe the players want to depose that entity, and get the people free. It might be.
So party members or relatives or genealogy. Okay, so that isn't part of the religion though.
No.
Okay, I'm only writing religion notes.
Right.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So here's what I have, and this is to catch Bruce up because he missed the first part of it. So we have it's a
I
hive
like
mind.
the tequila part.
It's a hive mind parasite. I put down just for my own satisfaction, like the Goa'uld, for lack of a better term. It's a perceived pantheon, but really it's just a hive mind. Now that could still be a pantheon. That could still be 100. You as the game master pick it up from there. But it's a perceived pantheon, however you want to run it. But it is a single hive mind with and this is from OGGM with a factional or fractional. I can't read my own writing interpretation. So like different sacraments is the way I wrote it down. So, Catholics versus Lutherans versus, Jews versus Muslims, so forth, right? So we all worship the Abrahamic God, but we do it in a different way, and everybody else is a heathen, of course. At 9th level, you get your worm. Again, for lack of a better word, somebody put the Wrath of Khan in chat. I love that. It could be the Wrath of Khan worm, because that actually kind of makes sense because, hey, Chekhov was his own person until he stopped listening, right? And then it's like, and then as a 9th level, you get your worm, you're reborn or renaming, which is great for the Earth Dawn side of this. But the Egyptians called it you're reborn. It doesn't take over, but it can punish you, kind of like an ego weapon. Am I missing anything, or have I changed anything that what you guys were thinking?
No.
And then the last one so far is we have at level 20, the character becomes part of the hive mind. It's lost, similar to a prior or Call of Cthulhu insanity. You just don't see the person the same anymore because that person can't see you the same anymore because that person is the hive mind now. I think I'm going to put Borg in here as well as just a concept.
And what if a PC in a D&D campaign decided to go the route of becoming a lich? They become an NPC when they complete that. You don't get to play.
Sure,
not
but
in most campaigns.
But the difference is the player chooses that. And this one, when you hit level 20
you don't necessarily.
You
would choose at your name level. You would choose whether or not you want the worm or not.
Sure.
Yeah, you choose death or worm. Well, we've educated you this far.
Death. I mean, if we're in the mechanics of the game, it's like, if you don't choose the worm, you have to give up your class. You can't be a paladin of the hive mind anymore.
I guess my only problem with that, game mechanically speaking, I agree with you. My only problem with that is that when you're following a religion that's this tightly wound up, I can't see them saying, all right, take your 2-level loss, go become a fighter.
Right. You likely...
No, if you don't take the worm, you will never ever get spells above that level.
I wouldn't even give you spells of that level. You're done. You are part of this religion. It is your sacred right and the dogma. Yeah, sacred duty. It is part of the dog. You will take this worm once we've given you this kind of knowledge.
Or become
but
compost.
Players will never do that.
Yeah, they would never. You're right. They would never take the worm. So your choice is to play up to 9th level and then change your class. Bye. But really, the worm.
Like if you're saying you have no choice, take the worm or die. That's where your religious war starts, right there. Your first group of player characters hit 9th level, and they're being told this absolute.
Well,
they're going to know in advance.
The first thing that comes out of that guy's, I draw my sword and attack. I cast magic missile.
No, that's fine. What's kind of fun about that, and I actually like the way you said that, OGGM. If the game master has kept all this a secret and the players couldn't read the book because it's just your homebrew stuff or they don't have the book, I love it. I absolutely love it. Like, what? I have to do a what? Imagine the surprise in their face when they're like, oh, you get the worm now. I don't want the worm. That's not an option, buddy. Now, you can fight, but you're no longer a cleric. You are now a fighter. So what do you do about your healing spells? You're going to need those things, or you can be buying a lot of potions if your world has that, and so forth. Then, as you said, the second group goes in with a little more knowledge and goes, all right, now how do we handle this?
Right.
We know this is...
Or if you're looking at it from the other way, and I know players who've done this, what do I get if I take the worm?
How many people have cut off their hand for the hand of Vecna?
Yeah. I know a guy who took everything that the DM threw of him because they thought it would make his character more powerful. Oh, here's a symbiotic. I'll take it. It lets me get this, and this, and this to add to my character.
Well, look at Cyberpunk. How many player characters in Cyberpunk will hack a body part off or go complete Borg,
Yeah, until they
in
lose all
Cyberpunk,
humanity.
that just kind of happens over time, though.
It does, but you eventually your character loses enough humanity that it's not even a character anymore.
That's actually one of the things I like about Cyberpunk better than Shadowrun is the fact of the location hits. So when you lose an arm, you're like, oh crap, my arm is mush. Yep, time to get a cybernetic one on there. In Shadowrun, it's more of a conscious decision. Like, well, I took some body points. I think I'd like to have this new cybernetic arm instead. It's pure necessity in Cyberpunk. I like that.
But going back to you take the worm or you don't, that goes back to one of the first things we talked about, which was players are going to not think that's fun when it first happens.
Again, the worm it doesn't take over the character. I think if it's described, it's the same as almost being a warlock in 5e, except for this one, it will specifically say, at times the worm is going to tell you to do things that, as long as it's within the construct of that faction of the religion, we'll say of the pantheon. So it's in the construct of that god. So using the Forgotten Realms gods, because it's easy. If you're following Tauren the True, and you start doing something evil, your parasite is going to say, you can't do that, and it's going to zap you for a d6. You're a lawful good paladin. You don't get to act like this. I am the actually, it's not going to identify itself as a parasite. It's like, we are the being of law, of justice and order, and you are straying from the past. It's just a reminder to the character, you still have this religion you have to follow. You can't do what you want, but it doesn't take over the character. If the character still says, no, I'm killing this sumbitch, yep, take another d6. God, ow!
And leave it ambiguous as to whether or not the hive mind is actually good or not.
Oh, yeah. It absolutely. I have I can't read my own writing, but I did write.
Leave it ambiguous as to whether they say they're good or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
And call it
this kind of parasite's not going to be good.
Call it something like
Parasite doesn't know it's evil.
The path of God or the way of God or something like that.
Oh, do some weird Japanese name, dope, whatever.
Dope.
Yeah. Dope. What religion did you follow? I follow dope. Why do you call it that? Well, when you reach the 9th level, you understand why we call it dope.
What religion
High priest is Homer.
What one do you follow? Why, you little?
A parasite or a symbiote? 6 of one, half does the other. I followed the way. See, now he's going back to the origin thing, or the whole I think, yeah.
Well, the way was the original group, what they called the Christians. The way. One of their monikers.
And occasionally, you gotta nail one of your followers to a cross, just to keep people
just to keep people online.
Wow.
There is a special place in hell for all of you. Just to let you know.
Dante wrote it up somewhere. So the next question, because there's a couple of things. Somebody made a good comment. I can't remember which one of you guys said it. Sorry, but said, "What do you get now? There's got to be something you get from having this worm. Otherwise, a player isn't going to be cool with it. Other than, wow, that's neat, and that's only if it's the right type of player for that. I wouldn't want to turn clerics into something that's OP when a lot of them are already OP. But what like say special power or special enhancement, or maybe it's an option, roll on a chart, or okay, if you do this, you can choose +1 strength or something.
Look at the symbiotes from Rifts.
The symbiotes from Rifts? I don't know what they are.
And the parasites. The
symbiotes are in the Atlantis.
Basically, they're living living magic items. You take this symbiote, you get this, and this, and this.
That's perfect.
But you lose this, and this. I'm 10th level. I'm approaching the church to begin my process to. You say there's a 10th level limit until you have to do a quest to go beyond 10th level. That quest is going to this place and getting the worm.
And it's a
But if you
magic
want
item.
it to feel like a religious event that's part of the progression of characters, you never want them to feel like they're being forced or they're going to die or it's an antagonist situation. But if you play it out like, here's your 10th level of magic item, look what it gives you.
Your 10th level magic worm.
You don't ever
or
it's a worm.
So
Again, it depends on your faction.
Or even say, it's a
it is the symbol of
church
your
relic.
class. It's the symbol of your class, or it's the special item that you get upon reaching 10th level. It's that first piece of your set from what now that you've hit 60 in World of Warcraft. Here is the thing.
So marrying what OG said, marrying what Max said, is that roll on a chart or it's like an ego sword, right? Yeah. In 5e, things you can only have 3 magic items attuned to you if we're building this for D&D or whatever. You don't have 3 magic items. This is a free item that is permanently attuned. If it's cut out of you, you die.
Okay, but what does it give you?
That's what I'm saying. It's so what I'm saying is, like, marry your chart. It's an ego sword, but like you roll on the magic chart on the magic sword table or whatever, or the magic item table, and that's what it gives you.
Well, they could do that. I was also thinking you could just lean into what the cleric can already do, which is cast spells if we're doing clerics, and maybe make a number of their spells act like DCC spells. Give them charts where they can, if they roll poorly, they do poorly. If they roll well, they do well.
I've got it. So just like in named levels in previous editions of when you get the worm, you are now worthy to start your own domain. Either
that's a lot of work.
No. What I'm saying is build a school, build a castle. You now are worthy enough to basically enter into domain play.
But not every campaign wants to go that direction, though. So my thought was more treat them just like specialty priests from, say, D&D or Dragonlance, Forgotten Realms, or whatever, and just say, if you're following Torm the True, again, I'm only using that because those are gods we recognize. You get, I don't even remember what they are, but you get the ability of Torm the True. If you're a priest of Lyra, like in my case, when I played that, I had certain abilities that I could do with my charisma and so forth, seduction and whatnot, because that was the nature of that god. If my parasite has that same nature, I would get something like that. I was thinking more along those lines. I'm not that anybody's had any bad ideas. I just think there are a lot of options here, but I think we should find one that we think suits this.
Maybe you become immune to poison.
Yeah, I mean, if you follow, is it Loviatar that you get crazy saving throws to poison?
Well, I'm saying that because, it's a worm that lives inside you. Maybe it attaches to your digestive system and gives you, it's...
the more we do this, people are going to call it the Gua'uld because that's what it does. It gives you the healing properties and so on.
If it's attached to you, symbiotes, if it's a symbiote, there's usually an exchange, and it being there is beneficial. And one way it can be beneficial is that maybe you don't need to eat anymore. Maybe you can breathe underwater, because it provides some oxygen for you, and oxygenates your blood some kind of way. There's all kinds of different things you can say that it can do for your metabolically because it's attached to your metabolism.
I actually like what Harris put into the chat there. Spells harder to resist. They get, the domain spell for, the free domain spell, something like that. Something along those lines. Something that's not going to be overpowered, but not something that's going to be like, well, this is going to be junk if I take it.
Well, so that goes back to if it's a pantheon or it's a hive mind, then the hive mind is made up of individuals. So does that mean that like there's an individual in the hive mind named Kaz, and so you worship specifically Kaz, or you worship, say, another specific entity that makes up the hive mind, or a corner of that?
Well, we did say before, this was what the consensus was. It's perceived as a pantheon.
Yeah.
Whether it is or not, who knows? But it's perceived as a pantheon. So cause would be one, and then there would be, you know, then there. What did we talk about the other night? Helios and Melios. So we've already decided that it would be perceived as a pantheon of sorts.
Right. So you could come up with a list of, you could do the specialty priest thing, like you're saying.
Well, which one do we like? We had a bunch of suggestions. Did Bruce chime in on this?
I haven't really chimed in on it, but I contributed to the fact that there's a game on mobile. This is all reminding me of where basically you get a brain worm, and as time goes on, he just starts taking over more and more of your life, and it causes you to become more charismatic around other people infected with the brain worm. So you are naturally inclined to do the nasty and impregnate one another, and then you do other things which propagate the species of the worm and have more seeding time and more opportunities for him to get infested into people of power and influence. It's a great and wonderful concept.
Does that mean JSG's got a Gygax worm?
No, he does not. If anything, he's probably one of the unvaccinated.
So this is for chat, because I've seen a couple of comments in chat. All of this is predicated on what we talked about on Wednesday on gatekeepers. What the goal here is trying to do. We're not just trying to come up with some random ideas, throw shit at the wall, and see what sticks. But we're taking what we talked about on Wednesday, which was Coriolis and the Icons, Earth Dawn and the Passions, Forgotten Realms and the Gods, and Call of Cthulhu and the Old Ones, and seeing if we can take all of that of some sort, smash it into a snowball, and mix up all of that in some flavor. And we have to some degree. Like, we've got the whole Old One concept in there that as the cleric raises in levels, that cleric becomes less and less human, less and less empathic, because, well, what we decided was a parasite. The parasite is part of a hive mind, which doesn't control the character, but it pressures the character into following the religion. That's just the easiest way to say it.
Right.
You still have free will of your character, but at the same time, you've committed yourself to the church. And the commitment was at 9th level, at your name level, you're taking a worm. That's how you've proven it. We let you get this far. Now it's time for the super secrets. You got your black belt. Now it's time to actually learn how to do some martial arts, right?
So that brings up a question real quick. So if you're just playing a fighter, or you're playing a ranger or whatever, you don't need the worm.
No.
It's only clerics and paladins.
Yeah.
Do we want to?
I guess that's the initial, is that those who are drawing on the power and feeding it
do we want to include wizards in there?
Oh, no. I would rather just stick the worm in a bunch of bards and let them start doing their bard.
Well, I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of people that want to stick worms in bards.
Well, you know what? This actually reminds me, because this is something we were talking about earlier, and I think we do need to get back to, is the fact that, because we were using the Ori kind of as an example to get us started, is the whole point was the Ori wanted needed more followers. The more followers, the more souls it could suck, the more consciousness, belief that it could take in, the more powerful it could get. So that has to be some constraint. I think we need to document this. There has to be some constraint there. Otherwise, why would the cleric preach for the god? Yeah, I got my worm. I got my powers.
This is why.
Okay.
If the numbers drop below a certain threshold, God gets mad.
The worm's not happy.
And starts doing things.
Yeah.
What about GDW Star Wars? Or West End Game Star Wars. If you were a follower of the dark side of the Force, you know, today you could kill one person and you got a dark side point. Tomorrow you got to kill 10 people. A month later, you've got to kill like a planet, or you're not getting any dark side points.
No wonder they kept building those planet killers.
Right?
That's why.
I mean, what do you think of a concept like that?
Probably. You have to grow the church, or maybe the ones with the worms, they shrivel up.
Well,
this
that's
is
what
an act of devotion.
That's why I'm saying.
Hell yeah.
That's why I'm saying go back to once that person hits their name level and they get the worm, then they have to enter a domain play of sorts to grow the religion. If they don't grow the
What
religion,
if the DM doesn't want to deal with domain play?
But what I'm saying is, it's not necessarily domain play, but he has to do things that feed the worm, like you were saying, gain dark side points or something like that. Whether that's build a church or do works for the worm.
From as the filthy player advocate, what do I, the player, get out of this?
Right.
That's what's going to motivate your players. It's great that we can write all this down and talk about it, but it falls flat if your player doesn't get something out of it.
Well, how about this? Instead of getting
more power, more something,
right?
Because people playing D&D, they want the whatever it is.
We're going the opposite route. We're not going the here get more route. We're going the punish you route. If you don't do it, you lose it. If you want to keep this, you have to do these things. Now, the thing is, what was it, you, OGGM, that was saying keep it ambiguous before? We still keep it ambiguous. It's your game. You're the game master. You run it how you want. It's just like I think that people run warlocks incorrectly constantly because they don't use the concept of the warlock as actually serving a fucking demon. And the demon never comes back to slap the player or the character in the face like it should. In this case, we have something in here that says, hey, if you are not meeting these standards, we don't make the standards ridiculous that nobody could follow. Yeah. But whether it's domain play or proselytizing or conversion or sacrifice of money and treasure, something that shows that sacrifice.
Sure. Yes. What do I get out of it?
You get to keep the powers.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you make you don't want it to be a punishment. If you look at the old artifacts and the old intelligent magic items, where you had to do something to keep the powers, but you're not going to get a bonus that would make the character overpowered.
Oh no! It's real easy. You will upset the worm within.
If I want,
and then you'll have negative.
Using the hand of Vecna, I need to do something, or the hand of Vecna will start turning against me. I want to keep using the rod of 7 parts. I have to do something, or the rod will start turning against me.
Now, we don't want to make it crazy because, even Mr. Max put on here, he'd be pissed if he found out he had to take a worm. Hey, that's the cult, man. But after the first time, of course, all the players and characters are going to know what the religion's about. But we already said that there's factionalism. Hey, it wasn't my idea for the worm. That's what the group consensus came up. So this religion and this world is the worm.
Well, the thing is, this wouldn't be a typical D&D world.
No, God,
so
no.
I wouldn't even imagine this religion having paladins, not real ones. They might.
Because the worm is the deity. It's like the Goa'uld from Stargate.
We're talking like high fantasy, high magic, almost high magic sword and sorcery, where
right.
It's
so if it's a sword and sorcery world like Conan, it probably has a darker aspect, and the religion's probably not benevolent. It's probably a bit oppressive.
Yeah, no. Okay, let me backtrack because I just want to make sure we're clear for the people in chat who are like, well, this world sucks. This is just a thought experiment.
Yeah.
We wanted to take those concepts that we talked about on Wednesday. Remember, Call of Cthulhu is not a friendly place. The first thing, everybody goes insane in that one. And that's one of the core concepts of what we're designing here, is you have that whole Call of Cthulhu thing that as you get closer to the old ones, as you start to understand more of that magic, as you start to understand more of that concept, you go insane. You lose your access to understand humanity. As the way heathen does. So we have to have that in here because we're combining these assets or these aspects. Then of course you have D&D with your normal gods. We discussed Forgotten Realms then, and then the two I discussed were Coriolis and Earth Dawn, which don't use gods in the same manner because the background of the gods, nobody knows where the gods came from. In fact, in Earth Dawn, there's no debate, but there's a debate. How do I say this? People don't care about the debate. Sure, they might be gods. I don't know. Or they might just be our collective consciousness. I don't care. The power is real no matter what. I go oogada boogada, things happen, I get blessed, I get healed. I don't care where it comes from. Coriolis, on the other hand, has the same background, similar background, but they have factions in there say, this is how you will worship. So 2 games took the same similar background, went different directions. That's what we're trying to combine here. We're not trying to combine, we're not just spitballing everything here. It's supposed to come from the aspect of Call of Cthulhu, Forgotten Realms, Coriolis, and Earth Dawn, and just kind of wrapping that into one thing to see if we can come up here. And I think we're coming up with something interesting. Would I use it in a game? Probably not.
No,
but I think it,
Yeah.
But
I think it's
we
interesting.
decided to hang our
Died.
vestment on Call of
The
Cthulhu.
original point was, I'm a beginning DM, and we're like, okay, here's the steps you need to follow to build a religion.
Well, here's the
Wow.
thing: is that with the worm, one thing you can do is if you are not feeding it, because basically this is how you would feed it, is doing the conversions, whatever. Is that because if you're not feeding it, that worm's going to get upset, so it's going to start feeding off of you.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to have some negatives to, like to your strength, negatives to your constitution, things along those lines where,
Well-
it because it needs to sustain itself now until you start feeding it again, you're going to have that.
I kind of like that.
I mean, look at
As-
Venom in Venom, he says, if you don't feed me, I'm going to eat your liver, Eddie.
Yeah.
As Raceland grew in power, he became physically weaker and weaker.
Well, he shared his soul with Fistodantilus, so that didn't help.
So, but that's kind of the whole concept that we're going with, though.
Okay, let me put this. You guys keep talking amongst yourselves on this one, or talk to Chad if you want. Will I get this written down? I want to find a way of writing this concisely.
So yeah, if anybody's confused, this is a master
What?
class in how to design a religion. The original question is
Masterclass.
well, yeah. When we start charging you, it's a master class. It's how advice to a beginning DM. A round table of DMs discussing how would you design. Is a religion important to the game you want to run, and then how does that religion evolve in your world? We're playing Microscope.
And we want to do it in an interesting way, not in just the whole fact of like, oh, I just have God of good and a God of evil and a God of thievery and a God of the elements, and that's all I do. Anybody can do that.
That's fine. If that's what you want for your, we're not telling you that's not fine. We're just saying, here's the thought experiment, starting from big and slowly getting littler, how that religion developed, And in this experiment, the starting phase of the religion was space hive mind comes to planet.
Yeah, it's a we're spitballing.
Yeah,
essentially.
Well, see, we got a couple people that don't like it, and a couple people that do like it. So there we go.
And make sure if you're enjoying our discussion, make sure you like and subscribe.
Yeah. And super chats are awesome too.
I think a cool way to introduce something like this might even be that it's not necessarily.
It's frozen.
I hate my ISP if I haven't said that already.
Just let it go.
It's like
Let it go.
He needs to hit his quota.
You could introduce this as a cult that already within a world that already has religions, perhaps. Perhaps your world is like a points of light world where there are civilizations and lots of wilderness, and your party encounters this cult, and then you bring it to the rest of the world because you're so helpful, and maybe at some point one of the characters becomes a cleric, maybe. But
so you're saying
learn
supplant a current religion?
Yeah, why not?
There's nothing necessarily wrong with that.
Yeah.
It could be a cult of personality too.
The player
it's a
Okay, now that
hybrid.
song's gonna be stuck in my head.
The characters discover the old temple, and then they all put the earworm in their bodies, and at that point, then you retire those characters and let the worm develop within them, and they roll up new characters that discover that their town is not the way it was when they left in spring.
Right, and it could be if it's a brand new world and you haven't really decided one way or the other, You could just throw this in and see how it sticks. Something like this.
You know what? Here's something else. So the hive mind or the worm or whatever is completely it's not intelligent, but when you graft it onto yourself or you take it in, it gives you these powers. So the hive mind, going back to the whole old world and old one kind of thing, is that the alien species all they want to do is they want to propagate. They don't care about religion. They don't care about being worshipped. They are not intelligent, right?
You just reminded me that Rick and Morty was at season 2, episode 4, with the thing that always had the stories.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. And they had to lock him. They basically locked
in the house.
Locked the house down. Yeah, exactly. So, but essentially, it just all it wants to do is it's a dumb organism. It's an amoeba.
So I'm changing what you said because I think that makes perfect sense. It's the hive mind is actually not intelligent; it just wants to feed and fuck.
No, it's got to be the Holy Ramen Empire.
Huh. Holy Ramen Empire.
No,
Yeah.
I think if you want to run this as a comedy or as a one-off, you just need to port the movie Slither over to your tabletop.
All right,
But these various priests and what have you, and they discovered that by grafting these creatures onto them, taking what Bruce says, they go into a ziggurat or they go into an ancient temple and they find these creatures. They're in like old drums and things like that, right? And they graft them on, and it's like, holy shit, I've got this power now. And so they are helping the species to propagate, but the species doesn't. The parasite doesn't really know anything about the religion or why they're being worshipped.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't care. It's still feeding on. I actually picture these more like horrors from Earth Dawn, where it's like it's just you're horror marked, and it's just feeding on your emotion, and that's what horrors feed on. They feed on negative emotion, your anger, your fear, your rage, your lust. You know, it's pretty much the 7 deadly sins type stuff. It feeds on that. Now, these don't have to be the exact 7 deadly sins. This could just be feeding on sacrifice, faith, and belief. Oh, you somehow, again, it's an entity we don't understand. It's not going to walk around with a cheeseburger in its hand to heal it or to feed itself. It's going to feed on something that we might not consider. How could that even be food? It just does. You know, chlorophyll works. Sunshine makes plants grow. You know, that's magic too. Damn it. Anyway, but the point that I'm making there is that, is my one caveat that I have to try to reconcile then with what you said, Krafty, is if we don't put the worm in until 9th level, how does that propagate then? Because if you're saying we found them in barrels, it almost sounds like at level 1 you got to get the worm. Almost like getting this
1,000 years ago, like the first guy found this and said, "Holy shit, this is awesome," and he starts spreading the worm, and so over 1,000 years, the religion has grown.
Yeah,
and the worm has grown. It's not at level 1, and just like just like Tom Cruise, you have to be at a certain level in order to get the worm.
Because you would be the only one that could help.
Correct.
All right. So before then, would it be like what Shauner said there? It's like more of like a psionic thing. It just has this.
Yeah.
Like how do I, if I were to come to the cult and say, you guys healed my mom. Obviously, you're a great cult of healing. I want to have those healing powers as well. I want to worship whatever you're worshiping. How do I join the club?
Okay, actually, yes, they do get it at first level. If it's emblazoned on a book, on their holy symbol, whatever, it takes them those 9 levels to attune to it.
Or it hatches.
Then it's graph. Yeah, it attaches at 9th level.
That's awesome. That's good.
Because yes, it's your holy symbol. After 9th level,
it's your spell component pouch.
So it's no longer a worm. Now it's an object.
No, it's an egg, like what Baron G-Rock says. It's an egg.
Oh, it's an egg that you carry around and nurture.
There you go.
Right.
Oh, just like health class in
it
eighth
takes-
grade.
Yes.
It
Don't
takes,
drop
but
your
basically, it
But-
takes 9 levels to attune, or
Right.
even 10, however you want to
So
do
you
it.
stick the
So-
egg in your belly button.
No, so when you go to the religion,
It's a
they will
jelly bean.
they'll hand you a religious object. The egg is within said religious object, and then at 9th or 10th level, they'll break that open, and then they'll graft the thing that's inside on you.
Mm.
Okay. You know what's actually kind of funny about this is I could actually see this to some degree working in an Earth Dawn type game, not Earth Dawn itself, but an Earth Dawn type game, because in Earth Dawn you attune yourself to magic items, right? So, and you don't have the full grasp of the magic item. You have to, through adventuring, spend your legend points and do deeds. Like not every level, but like every 3rd or 4th level, there's usually or rank, there's usually a deed that you have to do. Also, there's a key knowledge you have to learn each time.
Yeah, D&D had for a brief period of time the legacy items, where you had
I don't know what those are, but
they were items that you had to give experience points to.
okay.
And as they leveled up,
It's a similar concept.
More
Okay.
powers. Yeah, similar
Yeah, so-
concept.
so-
Wave
so-
Whelm and Black Razor were legacy.
You're not
items.
overpowered enough. Here, have this.
And in mechanical terms or in game terms, it would act if you're up on the mountain and you're fighting some goblins or orcs, and the shield that you have this religious symbol grafted onto falls into a crevice. You now have a quest to go get back said item, and because you've been attuning to it, that you know where that item is because it is speaking to you.
All right, so the last question I have, because I mean we could get really deep into a whole religion lore thing, but I only have one last question. Based on what we started with, is so again we were starting with the premise of the Ori. It's changed from that, but we're starting with that premise, right? One of the things we talked about is as you're leveling up, there's a change in you. The change being whether it's like the old ones where you just go insane, you start to become more distant, you start not understanding humanity. I don't know how a character in a D&D world would necessarily be able to, some players could do it, but just on a general level, pull that off or even want to pull that off. So what about something more like the Ori or more like the Dark Side of the Forest where you have physical changes that come with that? I mean,
Well,
like
the physical changes don't start happening until the graft.
Yeah.
Sure. No. I'm not against that. And maybe not even at level 9, just because you have the graft, whatever. But at level 10, little minor thing. Yeah, I'm all for that. But my preference would be I like the idea of becoming more distant and almost being unapproachable by the time you're level 18 or 19, because you're seeing things almost on the realm of gods, where timelines are in thousands of years. You might not live that long, but you're seeing them like that, where clairvoyance is almost natural to you, and you don't understand why people don't get the greater vision. So, sometimes you'll wipe out an entire city.
You could write that in as the descriptions of how things are interpreted.
But would a player be able to play that?
Do it, Some will, some won't.
Yes.
Well,
there we go.
Well, a player kind of already does that though. As you go from like level 1 to 5, right? You're more powerful than a commoner, but you're still powerful. Then you go from level 5 to 10 and you're like superhero. From level like 9 or 10 to level 15, I mean, it's like you would see a goblin and you'd go, what is this? This is a joke, okay? Or you'd see a shopkeep and it's like, I'm so powerful, if you don't give me that item behind the counter, I'm going to kill you, murder hobo style.
Well, wouldn't even be thinking about killing you. I'm just going to, this item is necessary. I'm going to grab it. And when he tries to stop you, you just flick your wrist and he's gone.
Right. And players do that already.
Yeah.
So,
but there's a big difference. Yeah.
Well, yes, I know,
But there's a big difference in what you said there to me. Now, it might not be to most people. Maybe this is how I see things. There's a big difference between the players like, well, I guess I'll have to kill him then. And the player's just like, whatever, I'm taking this. Hand wave, die. There's a difference between I meaningfully am turning into a dick to I didn't even realize what I had done. Like, I needed that item. It's for my religion. It's for this quest. I'm doing these things. It is of greater importance. This thing that, oh, did he try to stab me? I didn't even notice because I just pushed him into the ground and had to move on. It's almost like the alien.
Yeah, that's going to take some work from the referee or the DM.
That's why I'm wondering if a physical nature.
Yeah.
That's why I'm thinking maybe a physical change, kind of like how the Ori did it, where they turned their skin gray, or Emperor Palpatine, he got all wrinkly and weird looking and so forth. But something that says
Conan the Atlanteans.
Sure, yeah. But I guess what I'm saying, this is a personal preference of mine. You guys may disagree. If somebody's high level like that, I don't believe that you should be able to hide in just normal society. Just like, oh, I got my hoodie up, you can't tell. Nah, screw that.
No,
you have a way.
No, you. So if somebody reaches 9-10 level, they're going to be renowned.
I don't trust characters, Shauner. Or I don't trust players, Shauner. That's my problem.
If a party went to the Dark Wizard's tower and cleared out the tower and the entire army of orcs in front of said tower, that character is going to be known. Okay,
it's going to be seen differently.
Yeah, Frodo, for as much as he wanted to get back to the Shire and just be a normal hobbit, couldn't because everybody knew.
Now, games like Earthdawn build that into it with the legend point system, and you have these legend. Yeah, you're right. You have these legendary statuses. But D&D doesn't have that built in. That would take the proper type of DM. And I guess what I'm trying to say in this is, while I agree with all of that, we need to make sure that this final aspect is written in a way or incorporated in a way that if a DM wants to hand with, I don't worry about that nonsense. There's still something that there's a game mechanic, even if it's just a coloration change of the eye, or you get pointed ears, or you grow a tail, or some crap. I don't know.
You become a tiefling.
The Witchers, their skin changes color, their eyes change color.
They're obviously not mere human.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and the thing is you could actually have like a D6 chart.
Yeah, no. This is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a D6 chart. They roll a D6 every level, and that is a mutation that they're.
As long as it's fun, they'll still keep doing it. As long as they're getting something out of it, as long as it's fun.
Oh Lord! Well, why isn't he in here?
As they gain levels, they become more and more like mongrel men.
Oh no!
Hi.
It's racist.
No.
Can't
say that.
It was funny as fuck then, and it's funny as fuck now. I don't give a shit.
Oh, Brute, I actually I put my response that I would have put. So when I started the stream today, I talked about that incident. So anybody who wants to go back and watch that, I talked about Tanker's Tavern on that. But I did put what my response would be in my new Facebook group. So here, let me post one more time in a chat for the people who aren't here. The Facebook group.
I don't have Facebook.
That's fine. Then.
Bruce, I'll clip it and send it to you.
Yeah. No, that's perfectly fine. I don't expect people to have Facebook. I reopened up my account for this purpose only. I had to create a new group though, because I lost access to the Legion Myth group. Don't ask me how.
By the way, you'll love my response to the question.
You lost to the Facebook group because you haven't sacrificed to the worm, Max.
There you go. That's what happens. You lose your social media account.
Yes, that's
wait. Then I am never sacrificing to a worm again.
That's how you punish the players. Oh, yeah, your Twitter account, your 10,000 followers gone. What? No.
So I guess just to finish up, so that we're all on the same page, we're gonna have a random physical change, and then right into the dialogue a mental change, but you can't force a DM to enforce that.
No.
Okay.
But
if you give him the card, that describes all the benefits and all the disadvantages that the worm / magic sword, magic whatever, and if you list one of them is, you start seeing things this way, half of the players will try and play that and half won't. And that's just right. That's a risk you take,
But this is honestly an exercise of how you take ideas and how you build a pantheon for your own world. Therefore, all 6 of us, we all have now this understanding of how this particular world works. This could almost be like a session 0 to use a buzzword.
If you want to do that way, if people can go, this was not a definitive, like, we have now designed this, we're going to use this. This is literally, and I know I'm saying this a lot, but I just want to be very clear to people. I love the ideas that have been thrown into chat, even if we didn't use them. That's not that they were bad ideas. They're great ideas for you. We had a focus here. So we talked about this stuff on Wednesday. What I thought didn't happen on Wednesday that I wish we would have talked about more wasn't just, oh, look, there are religions out there. And I thought that there was a generally good discussion on, look, there are religions out there. D&D's got religions. Earthdawn has religions. Call of Cthulhu has the old ones and so forth. And I thought that, but we didn't talk about how to incorporate that into your game. We just kind of talked about, look, these are there and they're different. Yay, we were done. So what I wanted to do with this was move to the next step and say, well, let's literally incorporate them all. How do we do that? And somehow from Call of Cthulhu, Earthdawn, Coriolis, and Forgotten Realms, we got worm creatures inside of.
Well, yeah.
But that's great.
Apparently, we're all just secret Babylon 5 on slash SG1 fans.
No, but that was great because now you saw the process of how 6 different people. Believe it or not, it's less complicated when you do this by yourself. But we had 6 different people. We wanted to get good ideas. I think we got good ideas. I'm not saying I would use all of these, but between the 6 of us, we got good ideas. Look, you guys wouldn't use all the ideas I come up with either. That's just the way it is. But so this is what we ended up with. In a simplistic sense, because we don't have to go down any more rabbit holes. It's a hive mind parasite.
Rapey little mongrel men.
Or no raping mongrel men. Gross. It's a hive mind parasite. It's a perceived pantheon, so that's up to you as the game master if you want it to be an actual pantheon or not. But it's a perceived pantheon, the way it works. So I guess the closest thing, because I have it written down, is like the Goa'uld from Stargate. It's got factions that have different, but the human factions aren't up here. The factions are on the earthly level of like people who have different sacraments is the way I wrote it down. So you might worship the way of, what we have of the pouring of the beer, and you might worship the way of the letting of the blood. And of course you think each other's a heathen because, obviously barley makes you feel better. So that's why we do it. And spilling blood hurts. That's why we don't do it. And the other's like, no, you must have that sacrifice, whatever. I'm
sacrificing my liver.
You're sacrificing.
It's like there was a show that I saw the other day. It was like, I eat hops and grains on a plate, and I'm a health nut. I drink it, and I'm an alcoholic with issues. It's,
Wait, what did I miss? Because what?
Wait, what?
This has got to be answering somebody else, or I missed something.
But not religions. That means
Hugimongo, maybe there are no witnesses, survivors, so no one but the party knows. Yeah, actually.
Wait, are there any girls there? If there are, I want to do them.
God.
I detect the darkness.
Come on, dude. Okay, we're all done with that one. So where was? Oh, at level 1. At level 1, you get your egg. It's locked in an object, a holy symbol of some sort. At level 9, the egg is implanted in you, and by level 20, you are pretty much no longer of this world. Between random rolls of physical changes that happen to you, if the game master is playing it, I don't want to say properly, but playing it to its full potential, the character will change to a point of falling into that line of like the Priors or of Call of Cthulhu, where you just don't understand this world anymore. However, how are you still a capable character? Because we're not going to take away the agency of the player at all. The Goa'uld doesn't take over your mind like it does in Stargate, but it will punish you for not following the tenets of that religion. If you are supposed to be a religion of sacrifice, you are going to sacrifice, and it's going to hurt you if you don't. If you're a religion of justice and truth, you are going to be fair and honest in your dealings. If you don't do that, it's going to zap you or lower an attribute or something. It's almost like a talent crisis. Oh my God, another Earthdawn term. If you're not following your discipline properly, you suffer a talent crisis. Heathen Dog knows what I'm talking about. And this, anybody who's played, I'm running out.
It's kind of like
you'll get more alcohol
too.
It's like a what? Oh yeah. It could be. A talent crisis in Earthdawn is very similar to that, or almost like an atonement, where it's like you're not following the tenets of your discipline properly, so you actually lose ranks. Your dice are lowered. So Yeah, so that's what it is. It's more of a punishment plan, but it still allows the character to keep agency. You're not going to be so far out of it that you're insane like Call of Cthulhu, because that wouldn't be fun for a Dungeons and Dragons type game character. But you definitely changed, and the party, and preferably the players in the party, also notice this change. Like, you are not like you used to be. You are so distant. It's like talking to you is in metaphor now. I don't get it.
And the world and the NPCs would treat the players differently.
Oh, yes.
That's yeah.
Oh, what was that Star Trek episode? Was it Jalad at Tanagra or whatever the hell that was?
That. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like you're talking like that. It's like, I don't understand any of this, At level 1, you're just, he makes us go. Another Star Trek reference there. All right. So I had fun putting. I just don't want to spend a lot more time on this unless you guys do. I think we spent a lot of time on it. What did you guys think of just that exercise of putting that together?
It was fun.
Yeah, I think we've made something that in my mind would be a great, dark, Conan type world. And it would still be fun to play in. It might have a shelf life instead of being a go-to game, but it'd still be fun.
Yeah, I don't remember all that. It's been a long time, but yeah. So I think we did a good job here putting together. This is kind of like what I wanted to see more of on Gatekeepers. Now, of course, we ran out of time. Number one, but it's this helpful stuff. The point being is like we can talk about it, but let's also put some help out there. Let's give some guidance. We're not the only people. This is not the only way to do it, but just put some guidance out there to give some people get the brain juices flowing. Aaron, you're gonna say something?
And the steps that we followed.
Yeah.
I mean, truthfully, I think that this is something we should incorporate in more of the Gatekeeper streams, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Game design and, yeah.
Or how to incorporate it. And maybe Baron and I have completely different ways of doing it. So we're talking about how to handle a situation. And I do it this way. And Baron's like, screw you, you're an idiot. I do it this way, because I get that a lot. I mean, some of the things that a lot of people watch, how I talk about how I run games, and like, I would never play in your game. The funny thing is I've never had a want for players, because once they start playing, they realize, oh, this is actually pretty fun. I'm not saying I'm a great GM, by no means. I will even say that all 5 of the people on here are probably better than me, but
No.
I know some of the tricks, and there are things that I've done that where you might say no, like Krafty saying people don't like that survival stuff, but there's a way to make it work. I think Free League does it well, but he is right. People don't want to freaking play a spreadsheet simulator all the time. But there are ways to make it go. I keep players poor. You are not going to get what you want. You're going to strive for what you want, and you're going to get it one piece at a time, and usually one adventure after you wish you really had it. Not that that it's meaningless anymore, but it's one of those things where I'm not just going to hand you stuff like, oh, you want a +5 sword at 5th level? No.
However,
that's hey, Bruce, Belt of Battle.
Yep.
I think sometimes if you wait, say at +5, or we don't have to do the specifics. If you get your ultimate magic item at 20th level, yay. I'm done. I'm not playing anymore. I just got to write it on my character sheet and didn't get to use it. Yippee. So on some level, I think that's a bad idea. Whereas I get that you don't want to give something away that's really powerful too early, but you also don't want to give them their most sought after thing on the eve of their character retiring.
Right? No. No, absolutely. No. That's just being a douche about it.
What?
What I'm saying is that I keep you striving for it. What happens in my games is this: the adventure's over, or this adventure, we'll call it, is over, right? You've gone, you've looted the dungeon or whatever. I've cut the loot in half because I think all dungeons give out too much treasure. You've gone back to town, and you need to restock up. Well, you wanted to upgrade your armor, but Baron wants a spell. There's only enough money for one of them. That's what I do. So you as a party have to pick what's more important to you. You getting better armor or him getting a certain spell. And then the next adventure is the same thing. Well, now the cleric needs to tithe and Baron still needs a spell, or the thief needs new picks, or whatever. Now that's getting a little too nitpicky, but you get what I'm saying. Like it's always a choice. Like, crap, do I want to do this, or do I want to do that, or do I want to save up my money for more? Garthon in Earthdawn, Ethan Dog hates this, but Garthon was rich. He didn't tell anybody, and what he used to do in Earthdawn is he used to say, "Okay, you want to borrow money?" He did this to another player. But to the character in the game, he's like, you have to swear me a blood promise. Well, blood promise in Earthdawn means you must pay him back within a year and a day, and it must be the number one priority in your life, or you suffer what's called an Oathbreaker scar. Everybody knows you're an Oathbreaker in the world, and you suffer penalties and so forth. He's like, oh, I'm so poor. Like, he wasn't poor at all. He basically had Bitcoin. I mean...
I mean, at the same time, though, like if a player says, well, if a level 5 player says, I want that +3 Holy Avenger, and you tell them, well, it's in the belly of that Tarask, and they somehow, some way figure out how to get it, then they get it.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't do that. Now, I'm known. No. Did you say that for Heathen Dog? Is Heathen Dog still mad at me because I lied to him? Well, I didn't intentionally lie to him, but...
No. I mean, see, what you do is you tell them there's
level
a pack
5 getting it.
There's a pack of Tarasks.
Pack of Tarasks. What?
And it's in one of their bellies. You don't know which one.
Only on the Tarask homeworld.
Yeah. No, what I did is he wanted to become a Nethermancer, basically multi-class. And I said, if you do these 3 things, you'll get it. But the intention was for that to take time. He found a way of getting it done in like one adventure or something like that. And I was like, nope, you're not getting it. And yeah, he's still
not only is it a pack of Tarasks on the Tarask homeworld, but the instructions on how to get there are somewhere in Citadel.
I did not intentionally lie to you. He can, he just doesn't. I did not intentionally lie to you.
You intentionally lied.
He can think what he wants. It's not what happened. I didn't expect those things to be accomplished the way they're accomplished that quickly. And when I found out what had happened, it's just like, no, it's not going to happen. You don't just all of a sudden one day wake up, oh, look at this, I'm a Nethermancer. No, that has to take time. Look, Bob didn't even do Nethermancy. He was a human who had versatility, so he could learn abilities from other classes. And it took him a year to go from a thief to basically what would be the equivalent of thief illusionist. It took him a year of real time because I kept making him go through this. There was no chance in hell I was going to let him become a Nethermancer basically over the course of 2 weekends. Nope. So that's just something I won't do. And, that's one of the things where I look at now, was he smarter than me as a player? Maybe. Was it complete luck that it happened? Maybe. I don't know. Could be all of the above. But there comes a point where again, the campaign to me trumps everything. And that goes outside the scope of the campaign to be able to multidiscipline that quickly. So he wasn't a scout thief. No. He had 2 different characters. His scout was a scout. But remember that thief, Winza? After his scout died from the Wyvern, he took Winza and learned illusory with it. Remember Bubble? My major. So my major was just wow. Okay.
Where do you get that degree?
I don't know. Apparently, California.
Almost.
No, I mean we do have some weird classes you could take at some of our colleges here. I found a school that was teaching alchemy.
There you go. So. Yeah. So you remember. Bob doesn't remember Bubble though, which is funny. We all do. But anyway, no, I like this exercise, and I'm glad we had it. This is not exactly how I would do it. I would definitely go deeper. Some of the things we kind of stayed away from because I think you guys had a lot of good ideas about how the cultures would react to it. I was more concerned about the game mechanic sides because it could take a long time, to really develop a full on religion.
You have to have you should have a basis to start from, like you did. You had your four things, the 4.
I just wanted this to be a continuation from the Gatekeepers episode.
Yeah, but in order to make something as complex as even what we've come up with isn't that complex, but a world's religion that you're going to have in a game setting doesn't need to be as complex as a real one, but it has to at least simulate that.
Yeah,
it definitely went a different direction than I was expecting.
Yeah, but you have to have some kickoff point and some direction. Or you should, or you're just gonna.
And what we talked about here is it's a basic outline that is going to change and warp as the players are playing the game.
Yeah, and I think. I'm sorry, go on.
Because as the players play the game and as they go through the game, the referee will go, "Oh yeah, no, that's a good idea. I should do that instead."
Yeah, and it leaves it very open. It's got enough definition. Now, again, I would word some things differently. It'd probably be a good full page, maybe 2, but enough of background to get the feel of it, to get the understanding of it, and then from there, the game master, referee, animator, whatever you want to be, can go with it from there. Well, we're doing Toon. So Toon, it's got, if you watch the video on Toon, it's called an animator for the game master. You can go with it whatever route you want to. So Bruce can run it a totally different way than me, but still within the spirit of those 2 pages, because it still hits those core things. The 1-9-20, the worm concept, which, for one person, it's going to be the Wrath of Khan worm in the ear. For somebody else, it's going to be the Gua'uld worm, the pouch in the belly. Somebody else, it's going to be, I don't know, ringworm.
I know. It's going to be the clerics all get a belly ring, and the jewel in the belly ring is the egg. And eventually your body absorbs that belly ring.
Or that.
Or as clerics, you have to be left in the temple. And nobody really knows what happens, but you wake up and all of a sudden you have this thing in your chest.
Yeah, that could be some of the, because they said we already decided in this that the religions are factional. One of them might be like, this is what we're doing. It is such a great honor for you to do this. So let me change. This isn't a religion. In my fantasy game, I have the equivalent of, if you play Rifts, you'll know it, not juicers, crazies are. Well, I liken crazies to berserkers, right? So in my fantasy game, I have 3 methodologies of becoming a berserker, which is essentially a crazy. One is through psychic surgery. Basically, a psionic comes up to you, goes, and just messes with your brain. You're like, oh, look at my power. Another one is through a wizard basically saying, okay, you've seen, what do they call the lightning ball, the Tesla balls, whatever the hell they're called? Yeah. We put your hands on them and then the lightning, moves around. Well, it's the same thing, but it's to your skull. Okay? That's if a wizard does it. The third one is if, we'll just say a doctor does it. This is a nail. That is your skull. And you actually have nails sticking out of your skull. 1 nail per level. Excuse me. Now, there's some science behind that and some magic as well, but you get the idea. Some treat it like as in you are going to become a hero of the land. You are going to be changed from this process, but you're defending us. You're doing it to protect our society. We're only 100 families, maybe 500, 700 people total, and we need you and others like you to do this, to be our vanguard, right? Where other ones are like, find the criminals, boom, boom, boom. Get me the next one, boom, boom, boom. Each society treats it a little bit differently how they make their berserkers, but all of them go through this process.
That reminds me of that. There was a Johnny Depp movie about Jack the Ripper, and you found out that this one doctor had this tool, and it was essentially an early version of a lobotomy, and he was, that was part of the story. So. They didn't leave nails, but they had little holes in the side of your head.
I like the nail idea because one, if you've heard the story about the dude who had the railroad spikes shot through his skull, that was number one. Number two, if you look at the crazy in Rifts, they've got those implants, and I wanted something that kind of resembled that, but not being the crazy. Also, turning it into a fantasy realm is difficult. That's why it just kind of turned into the berserker or barbarian. But yeah, and it's just
in our own fantasy. We can have an NPC faction because no player is going to do this, but you can have an NPC faction, an extreme faction that you get castrated and replace with the worm. Replace it with the so you have to give up the ability to procreate in order to carry the
because it's worried about its procreation, not yours. Yeah,
correct.
Ew.
Well, I mean, look at Game of Thrones. I mean, about half the freaking palace were eunuchs there.
Yep.
So
I prefer to look at all the ladies in the prostitute outfit.
in season 1, yeah.
That was great.
All right.
I
Well,
drink and I know things.
any final comments on that? Then we'll just go into some casual discussion or whatever you guys want to do. But any final comments? I want to make sure you all said your piece and what you thought about that and your ideas with it, and then we'll move on to another subject.
Obviously, my faith and Crafty's faith is going to have a war.
Yeah, already have the holy war between the Crafties and the Hoteps.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
That was a
I
good
mean,
show.
honestly, so OGGM, his religion is obviously that his parasite, okay, goes to old folks' home to suck the souls out of their buttholes.
Oh God! Ah!
That's Bubba Hotep. That's the entire movie.
Yep.
It's a good show. Everybody should watch
Great
that.
movie.
I don't know.
Bubba Hotep
It's a good
is
movie.
as good.
Okay, so Max, you have a mummy.
You
that
did not convince me to want to see it. I'm just saying
hold
that.
on.
All right.
You have a mummy
Okay.
that descends on Shady Acres retirement home to suck the souls out of old people's buttholes, and the only people that are there to save these old people is Elvis. Yes, he's still alive, and JFK, who happens to be black because that's part of the conspiracy.
Because they transplanted his brain into a
They
black
transplanted his brain. Yeah, and Elvis is playing.
And-
It was sand.
And
what he said.
yeah, Elvis is played by
Bruce
Bruce
Campbell.
Bruce Campbell.
Bruce Campbell. I mean, it's Bruce Campbell.
Okay. All right. So that helps.
Bruce Campbell. Say
It's a
Bruce
horror, it's a
Campbell.
horror comedy.
Bruce Campbell and Ossie Davis
Yeah,
in a buddy film, which is
It's a good
really
show.
good.
it is. It's actually really good.
Well, if the gatekeepers say it's a good show, I'll pretend I care. I mean, no, I'll
Wow.
I'll,